I wanted to talk about the value of explanations in California legislation and what we call the plus sections. Now, in reviewing the over 2,600 bills that were introduced in the 2023 legislative session, I've come across a number of bill sections that I think could benefit from additional explanation. And what I mean by that is that some sections at the end of the bills, we call them plus sections, should not just merely make a statement or some sort of finding and declaration. Instead, I think those sections should contain a brief statement that explains or justifies the particular legislative statement being made. So, what's an example of what I'm referring to? Well, one standard plus section is when the legislature wants to apply a proposed statute to both general law cities and charter cities. Now, some of these bills simply include a legislative finding and declaration that they wanted to apply to all cities and not just general law cities, but also charter cities. And so, what you might find is the legislature finds and declares that Section 1 of this act addresses a matter of statewide concern rather than a municipal affair, as that term is used in Section 5 of Article 11 of the California Constitution. Therefore, Section 1 of this act applies to all cities, including charter cities. So it's merely a finding and declaration, no explanation. On the other hand, there are some bills that actually contain an explanation of why the legislature is making a finding and declaration in the proposed statute, of course. So, for example, here's one that I found. The legislature finds and declares that to lower the cost of housing production by reducing unnecessary parking requirements is a matter of statewide concern and is not a municipal affair. Therefore, Section 1 of this act applies to all cities, including charter cities. I think there are some other examples I've come across in recently introduced legislation in the 2023 session, again, that contain explanations, not just a mere statement. So, what do I mean? Well, one is the reimbursement requirement language that we utilize in California bills when there's a state mandated local program and whether or not that results in a reimbursement to the local jurisdiction. So instead of just saying no reimbursement is required by this act pursuant to Section 6 of Article 13B of the California Constitution, this particular bill said because a local agency or school district has the authority to levy service charges, fees, or assessments sufficient to pay for the program or level of service mandated by this act. Another was one that I found where they were doing a disclaimer for a gift of public funds that the bill did not constitute a gift of public funds. And instead of merely stating the legislature finds and declares that the addition of this act serves a public purpose and does not constitute a gift of public funds within the meaning of Section 6 of Article 16 of the California Constitution, period, they added, by incentivizing and attracting small budget independent film and television production to the San Diego region, which will bring economic growth, jobs, and internships to San Diego residents. So as opposed to the first example I read for you, which didn't include any explanatory information, these other examples, all three of them, particularly the last two, really tell the reader, such as the judicial branch of government, if they have to interpret the statute, the actual purpose of that legislative finding and declaration, or why a particular provision is required or not, such as with the reimbursable mandate language. So these later examples represent, I think, the better approach to take in drafting so that there's little ambiguity or lack of justification for any of these legislative statements or determinations that are a part of these bills.